First, Anupam, welcome to the program, and let's talk about what you are up to with Emergent Ventures and AI. Of course, the industry has moved a lot. We started with this kind of watershed moment of generative AI coming into the picture in 2023, and now almost 2 years hence, AI has moved at a breakneck pace. So Anupam, my first question is, where is your head vis-a-vis AI? How are you parsing all the happenings of the world? How are you framing your investment thesis and so on?
First of all, thanks for having me here. Always a pleasure. And by way of introduction, Anupam Rastogi with Emergent Ventures. We are a Bay Area-based seed stage focused venture firm. We've been focused on enterprise AI since we started in 2016. So we have been focused on this space for a while. And our model is to lead or co-lead pre-seed and seed rounds, partner early with founders, help them get to the next milestone, typically a Series A round. And we work pretty closely on product go-to-market and then downstream fundraising, navigating a bunch of company building milestones. Now coming to specifically AI, so we have about 45 portfolio companies now that we've invested in over the last 8 years. And these are across the length and breadth of the landscape. So all of these are B2B enterprise or mid-market focused primarily. And essentially both layers, application layer, infrastructure layer, application layer being companies that are going deeper either into a function, number of companies across sales, marketing, HR, finance, operations, you name it, or vertical focused companies which are going deeper into specific verticals, manufacturing, media and entertainment, logistics, others, and then number of infrastructure layer. So I'd say the opportunity in AI, there's many different types of opportunity. One lens I'll put on it. So all of SaaS and cloud combined today, it's about $750 billion per year. So big number, but all of corporate spend globally is of the order of magnitude of $50 trillion. So all of SaaS and cloud today is just about 1%, 1.5% of all global corporate spend, potentially a bit lower than that. So after all these years of SaaS and cloud, we have a tiny drop in the bucket. So for corporates, actually SaaS is not a big spend today. And the reason is that SaaS is primarily an enabler in its historical form. What's happening with AI, of course, is that with AI now you can deliver outcomes. With SaaS, it was basically just enabling someone to use the tool. So a salesperson, for example, would use a tool for $50 or $100 a month, but that salesperson may be making 10, 20,000 a month. So that's that same 1% type ratio or even less. But now SaaS can deliver outcomes with AI. That number can go up 10x, maybe more, over the next decade. So that's the opportunity we are investing behind and have been investing behind, and both a lot of our portfolio companies, and we are actively investing. That's what we're looking for, is how do you get to these large opportunities that are opening up and rewiring pretty much every workflow and every function and every industry will get rewired. So, of course, going a lot beyond what's happening today is just tipping it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of AI adoption. When all these things fully get adopted into entire workflows, everything is just going to look very different in how work is done more broadly. So I'd say now what does that look like? So I'd say, interestingly, AI has had many waves. So currently, of course, with Gen AI, which started somewhere around or started hitting mainstream around 2022 November with ChatGPT, and before that, some of the imaging models that came out. But a lot of that has been actually simmering in the background. And before that, we of course had the whole data, machine learning, deep learning wave, which is already today at that sort of meaningful scale. It has a lot of proof points. It already works. And when you combine the two, you get even better results in the enterprise setting. So your machine learning, deep learning model could be creating a prediction for something. For example, is this customer likely to churn, or what topics is this customer likely to be interested in? A lot of those type of things, machine learning is really good at based on your own data. You could be running that. And then generative AI could really help close the loop on, let's say, framing a communication with that customer. And when the two are combined, that makes for some really interesting businesses.
Do
Yeah,
you
maybe I can pause there.
case study in your portfolio of what you have invested in that combines deep learning and machine learning as well as generative AI?
Yeah, so number of companies do that. So we're I can take examples from customer service. I can take examples from employee productivity. So let me pick a couple of quick examples. There's one called Present.ai, Prezent, which helps corporate employees create presentations which are aligned with their data and their brand. So you can just give it inputs on who you are looking to present to. Is it a senior member of the executive team, a CEO? Is it a peer? Is it you actually give the persona and you give it the underlying data and create a entire presentation, and it'll be much deeper than let's say a Chat GPT or a Claude, or you can go to LLM today and ask it to generate some slides, but those won't be very customized to your data or to what should the story be. Versus this product is very trained on millions and millions of slide decks on what good, better, best, not good looks like on presentation decks. And then based on the persona, the storyline, the data, the machine learning will come up with, hey, these are the topics that should be covered, these are the topics that should not be covered, or whatever. And then Gen AI is used to actually generate the presentation. Similarly, we have a couple of companies which are doing really well in the customer service space, which we've been investors for a few years, and those are now sizable companies. And actually, two of those companies were a couple of the first adopters of LLMs back in 2018, when it was still sort of in very formative stages. But they run the machine learning on, again, the customer data, the sentiment, the tonality, and a lot of the underlying when they're trying to understand the conversation. But then when you generate the output, what should you now say to this customer in an email or in a live agent that's now a virtual AI agent that's chatting with the customer? That is generated using Gen AI. So again, it's a combination. So if you just had the Gen AI, you would be immediately able to tell that, hey, this is Gen AI generated, and it's not as customized to my problem. But when you combine the machine learning element with it, that is much better at surfacing, okay, here's a problem, this is an angry customer, this is a happy customer, this is this is the kind of issue, this is they are a churn risk or not. A lot of those things are identified by the machine learning piece.
So when you look at these companies that you have invested in and are looking at in your deal flow and so forth, could you summarize a bit of what you would like to see, like for when I look at technology that is emerging and all the trends, and I'm sure all the investors are looking at things in this way, is that, oh, I would love to see a venture like this, like solving this problem. Has anything come up has anything been triggered in your head as that I haven't seen this yet, but I would like to see a venture solving this problem using these kinds of principles of both deep learning as well as generative AI? And right now, the newest one is this cost efficient models, LLMs.
For sure. Yeah. So I'd say a couple of, I'll just mention them more at the thematic level that we look at rather than specific ideas. One is we are seeing AI go a lot deeper into engineering frontiers and a lot of areas like AI plus robotics. We just invested in a company in that space. We're currently actively looking at spaces like biopharma, drug discovery, clinical research, and others, and what AI can do there. Because there's a lot of these areas with tons of data, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of back and forth. So a lot of room for efficiency with AI. Also, we invested recently in a company in the engineering simulation space. So we're seeing a lot of these very core engineering type disciplines, which have a lot of data, a lot of prior art, a lot of people pushing regulations in some cases, where with generative AI, you can just architect an entirely new flow, which increases a lot of efficiency, which can really, let's say, in the case of drug discovery, really accelerate that process, or semiconductor design, new material discovery. So taking an active look at those spaces, meeting a lot of founders, we think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of big companies that will get created in those spaces. So that's
Drug
one.
discovery is a particular one. We've done quite a deep dive into drug discovery over the last few months. We've done discussions like this, and also we've covered some of the drug discovery AI companies. And one of the observations that came out of that, and this was before DeepSeek came into the consciousness of the industry, the models, the platforms on which you can do drug discovery research are expensive platforms, and it's these companies, the AI companies, the startups that are going into this space are catering to the large pharmaceutical companies. So if you look at drug discovery, should it only happen inside of the large pharma companies, or should it become democratized? Because there are a lot of scientists out there who have worked with large companies, large pharma, and in academia, in labs, and so on, who possibly have insights. And if they had access to a small platform, that would be, an inexpensive platform, not so much a small platform, more an inexpensive platform where they could start running their experiments and modeling their hypothesis, they could potentially come up with drugs at a much larger scale. So this is one of the, Atomwise, probably you're familiar with. Atomwise is not available for these individual researchers or small teams to experiment with. So now that we have this whole vista opening up of inexpensive AI models, the platform for drug discovery that can be democratized is an area where I think there could be very interesting development.
Yeah, I think conceptually that makes sense. I think there were certain things in the past with just given all of the friction and regulations and all the needs for trials, which just raised the bar significantly on the size of company that needs to be there. But I think as some of those things come down, there shouldn't be a reason that smaller teams can start doing that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, definitely looking forward to more on that front.
And then probably there is the general logic of these platforms being very expensive in other domains as well, where these can come down, where a lot of people can research and come up. It's like you brought up the material sciences aspect. New materials is definitely an area that has similar dynamics, where if there are platforms on which material science research can be done at much bigger scales, or chemistry research can be done at much bigger scale, with proper modeling infrastructure, domain-specific modeling infrastructure, those are interesting opportunities for building platform companies. And then there's a lot of opportunities once those platform companies come into being. There will be a lot of opportunities of building application companies as well on top of that platform as a service infrastructure that is yet to fully kick in gear.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what else are you looking at or investing in that are interesting case studies that we should discuss here that will trigger ideas and insights for the audience?
Yeah, I'd say, in the end, in our role, I feel we have to be very bottom up, and the best ideas are ones that I've not thought of. So often a founder will pitch you the idea, and that's when it hits you that, hey, this makes a lot of sense as you get deeper into it with them. Yeah. And especially I'd say with, a lot of the mass things which are more widely known, there's just tons of companies. The rate of startup formation has been just off the charts especially in the last 24 months. So a lot of just amazing people starting companies. So I'd say the more obvious the sector is, the exponentially higher number of companies that have started and by great teams doing that, well funded. So that's why I think you referred to domain expertise earlier. So a lot of these things are coming out of areas that I know nothing about, but you meet the entrepreneur and you then go and build expertise in those areas, or at least understanding, and you talk to a bunch of folks. So we're seeing a lot of that. It's a lot of under-digitized verticals, sub-verticals, areas, which are, especially with, let's say, the agentic model with human in the loop in many cases, where, so I'd say we look more for those threads of, hey, does this make sense? Or does this, there's some common threads, but I'd say specific ideas, as an investor, like we just see many more than I can ever imagine. And often the
What are you
best ones are just
seeing?
coming from
What are you
areas that
seeing
I've
in
not imagined.
what are you seeing in terms of the deal size? Uh, team size. Actually, let's not say deal size. Team size, and the stage at which they're coming to investors. And I'll preface that by explaining where I'm coming from. There is obviously right now, we know, because of all this co-pilot work, AI co-pilot work that has gone in, there's a tremendous amount that you can do with very few people. There's a lot more, orders of magnitude more that you can achieve with fewer people. So we are seeing leaner startups. The lean startup trend is really gone on steroids right now. And how much you can accomplish is also, as a pre-seed stage company, you can accomplish a lot more just because of all the all the infrastructure that is kicking in gear. And this is going to keep maturing. I think the infrastructure is going to get orders of magnitude more mature within the next, every year it's going to mature more and more. So there will be fewer and fewer people who can accomplish more and more in terms of what they can come to the market with. So, I mean, this is clearly the golden era of bootstrapping kicking in to motion. So what leading indicators are you seeing of this in your deal flow right now?
Yeah, so I think so a few different questions there. Let me see if I can touch upon all of those or some of those. So on the what's typically the stage that we are seeing companies at? So we see, let's say, we do both pre-seed and seed, and it's a wide spectrum. So we see everything from inception stage, where it's just an idea, to and maybe 20% of the investments we do are at that stage, and all the way to pre-series A is the latest we would come in. Companies already raised a seed and they have traction and momentum and all of that, and then everything in between. I'd say the median, just make it more actionable for the founders here. A good time to go to professional investors or institutional investors is, I'd say, again, this is more in the enterprise or B2B space, is you have built an MVP, you've gotten customer feedback on the MVP. And what I also recommend is doing meaningful market discovery. And that doesn't take actually having a product. So you can actually, a lot of the best entrepreneurs come and say, hey, we have spoken with 50 different people in our target persona. And, just through sheer hustle and reaching out on LinkedIn and cold emailing, through alumni networks or whatever, they've gone and talked to 40, 50, sometimes 100 people, and formed a very good mental map of, hey, here is my ideal customer profile. These verticals work. This is the kind of trigger of who would buy. Here are other three segments which will not buy from me. If someone comes and say, hey, the whole world is a buyer for this, that's a sign that the entrepreneur has still not spent time on understanding the persona. So the initial persona, I'd say relatively narrow is good, because you have to have a view of, hey, who are potential customers in the first couple of years, and then of course over time there has to be a really big market for it. As venture investors, that's what we're looking for ultimately. But having that granularity really helps. So that can happen at any stage. So the inception stage ones that we do are ones where, in most cases, those founders have that clarity that they've done
And
even
if
before they
that's the
started.
stage, if you get companies at that inception stage, MVP, with not really any revenue, just kind of discussions with the market, but good precise discussion with the market, what size checks are you willing to write?
So a typical check is 1 to 2 million from us, and we will do anywhere from 50 to 100% of the round. So the round size could be 1 to 5 million or so.
So you're saying you're willing to write checks on MVP and market discovery discussions for $1 to $2 million?
Yeah, I'd say at the inception stage, it'll be at the lower end of that potentially. Again, it depends a lot on the specific idea and how much it'll take to build the product. So if it's a very complex enterprise infrastructure type product that can only be built with 5 million and you cannot demonstrate proof of concept without that, then some of those companies would raise 4-5 million. But I'd say in vast majority, inception stage will be more like a $1.5 to $2 million type round, and we'll do maybe 1.5 of that.
And what is your thinking right now on exit? So I'll preface that with some of what we are hearing. There is a class of investors who are following the traditional venture capital model and chasing unicorns. And then there has emerged another set of investors who are looking to do capital efficient ventures and seeking early exit. And some of that exit process could be into later rounds of funding, or it could be straight away strategic exits. How are you looking at exits in this current market, given that the number of startups out there is very high right now, right? The number of startups, it's high, already extraordinarily high, and it's going to explode even further. As the AI infrastructure develops further, the infrastructure enables really, really lean startups. As this dynamic explodes, the number of companies is going to explode even further. And finding exits for this number of companies is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, I'd say for the venture path, generally that only works with those really large eventual outcomes. So, and even if we are a pre-seed and seed investor, but the way the whole model actually works is at least a couple of companies in our portfolio, and we invest about 20 to 25 companies per fund, which we invest over 4 or 5 years. At least a couple of those have to become really big venture scale outcomes. And often that involves, of course, raising multiple follow-on rounds. So all the big names in Silicon Valley have led rounds into our portfolio. So it's a little bit of a, we don't play in a vacuum. So we have to invest in things which someone else would invest in a couple of years from now, or the company can just get to such velocity and scale that it doesn't even need to raise. That happens very rarely. But in most cases, to scale, what's not become cheaper, to also a previous point, I think software on the face of it looks like prototyping has become cheaper. Building complex software has actually not become cheaper yet. It still takes as much time or effort, even with all the AI tools. And go-to-market has definitely not become cheaper, again, linked to how much overcrowding there is and just how much noise.
It's going to be more expensive with so much noise in the market. Go-to-market is going to become more expensive.
So to become big, companies do have to raise more capital over time. Of course, there are amazing companies and founders who are able to find other models with virality or PLG or others where they don't have to spend that much, and those are fantastic. But yeah, to answer your previous part of the question, definitely we need to see some path to a very large outcome and a founder that is really driven to do that. But having said that, statistically, most companies won't get there. So we also see in our portfolio and number of outcomes that could be 100, 200 million, and there's a lot, that volume is a lot higher. Many of them don't even get announced fully, right? Because for these large public companies, $50 or $100 million is not something they need to publicly announce. So for at the pre-series, those could be good outcomes as well. But that's not what we are investing behind. Fundamentally, we need to see that path. And I think, again, the actionable piece for founders here is think very carefully before raising any institutional venture money. Take that call of whether you want to go the bootstrapped route and maybe raise from angels or others. Because as if I were personally investing as a angel, a 5x return would be fantastic, right? I invest at a 5 million valuation, company exists for 25 million, I make a 5x. And if there was a good reasonable chance of that happening, I would love to do that. as a pre-seed seed investor, that's actually the thing I'm trying to avoid very actively, because there's a lot of $25 to $50 million opportunities out there, and a lot of founders who would make life-changing outcomes with that personally. So that's where the venture investor and founder could be misaligned unless the founder is really passionate about building that big billion-dollar type plus outcome. So I'd say that's what I encourage founders, is to think very carefully whether they want to go that venture route. And venture is a very, very specific type of rocket fuel, which once you take that, you have to get on that rocket ship. And then if you don't, then, it's not a desirable place to be in. So if you're really passionate about building that big rocket ship, that's where venture capital can really help you and help you accelerate very fast.
But I just want to clarify for those of you who are listening, there is what the path that Anupam is describing is the traditional venture capital route. And there, the thumb rule is investors are trying to go from $0 to $100 million in 5 to 7 years. That is the trajectory of a so-called unicorn venture. You're a hyper growth company, high velocity, high repeatability. Without high degree of repeatability, you cannot get to these high velocity companies. That's the route of traditional venture capital. Now, the market is exploding in many different directions. The market is also exploding in the number of funds. And there are these micro VCs. There are tons of micro VCs in the market right now. They are kind of angel investors who have decided to raise small funds and operate, a single partner fund and so on and so forth. And many of them actually don't operate in the traditional venture capital model. Some of them are looking for these $50 million, $100 million exit, $25 million exit, where there is a 5x return. And that class of investors does exist today, partly because of the explosion in the number of investors out there. So just wanted to clarify that for those of you who are strategizing. We do have companies in the portfolio who are not looking to go the full venture route, not build a unicorn company. They want to build up to a certain point, get enough traction, enough validation, and then seek exit with a small amount of investment, 2-3 million investment max. So that is an acceptable path. As far as entrepreneurs are concerned, it is an acceptable path, and you should, decide which direction do you want to go, and accordingly you have to find investor entrepreneur fit. The path that Anupam is describing, you cannot go to Anupam with this idea of getting a $25 million exit and a 4x 5x kind of return, because that's not what he's looking for. But there are investors who are looking for that path as well. So just wanted to clarify.
I think that fit is really important. So it's, I think, important to be clear both to oneself and to whoever you're raising from, having alignment there. And like you said, I think there's a lot of angels and angel-like, micro funds and others which are available where you could raise a small amount of capital. And as long as you're upfront that, hey, we think there's a very attractive $50 million exit opportunity here to build up something quickly and exit for $50 million. So there's definitely more capital for that sort of play. But it's just different from, I'd say, more of the classic venture path.